Uh, all right. Well, yeah, some folks might be joining us as things get going, but I'll get us started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Center for Community and Citizen Science Collabinar. My name is Ryan Meyer. I'm the executive director of the Center for Community and Citizen Science. So we're a center based at the School of Education at UC Davis, and so we do research on various forms of public participation in science, citizen science, community science, many different terms for that. And then we also do a lot of work on helping folks do citizen science, community science in various ways. We help develop tools and we provide support and work with a lot of different kinds of partners. So excited to have Amanda here as our guest for the Collabinar, and to have folks joining us from a lot of different places and contexts. So I'd encourage you as you join, please introduce yourself in the chat. Share your name, your title or affiliation, or just where you're coming from. We'd love to see that. And before we dive into the program for today, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which many of us are gathered. Some folks in Davis in the room there, and also me up here in Woodland, California. I'm also home here with a sick child, so you might hear her in the background. Apologies in advance. But anyway, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we're gathered on here today. So for thousands of years, this land has been the home of the Patwin people. And today there are three federally recognized Patwin tribes: the Quechel-Dehee Band of Wintun Indians of the Calusa Indian community, the Quetzal-Dehee Wintun Nation, and Yoche-Dehee Wintun Nation. The Patwin people have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. It has been cherished and protected as elders have instructed the young through generations, and we're honored and grateful to be here today on their traditional lands. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah Angulo, who will explain a bit more about the Collabinar and how that runs. And thank you again, everyone, for joining.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah, and I'm the Community Education and Outreach Specialist here at the Center. So our Collabinars invite colleagues from across the globe to present their most exciting developments and challenges in the field of community and citizen science. So attending this Collabinar today are people we invite to engage with in this field and talk about citizen science and community science at different levels, as you can see in the chat. So this 1-hour session aims to foster an environment of mutual learning, and is less of a formally structured webinar as it is more of a discussion on this topic that is brought to you today. So throughout our time together, I'll monitor the chat where you can post your thoughts and questions, and we'll answer anything as we go along. But we'll have time to talk more in discussion mode at the end of the presentation. And as you may have noticed, it's being recorded, and we'll post that to our website and to our YouTube channel after the meeting is over. So I'll introduce our presenter, Amanda Vilchez. So this is kind of a funny colliding of worlds where we attended the C-Star Sci conference in May, and our colleague Peggy, who isn't here today, she actually met Amanda and learned all about Amanda's research and thought, wow, you should come to a Collabinar and talk more about this. So here we are today. And so Amanda is a PhD student in the communications department at Cornell University. She's a Peruvian biologist who graduated from the Agrarian University of La Molina in Peru. Her studies result from the synergy between her two backgrounds, natural science and social science. She's interested in the potential of participatory research, community science particularly, to reconcile politics, society, and science. She highlights community science's democratic and political role in including diverse voices for resolving conflicts, and its scientific role in knowledge production for solving real-world problems. She's now studying volunteers' experience in community science projects focused on urban and rural biodiversity in Peru. So with that, I will hand it over to Amanda to explain her research, unless Heidi.
I just wanted to ask,
wanted to add?
I just saw Ryan put in the chat that that we're asking people to introduce themselves on Zoom, and so I didn't know if we also were going to introduce ourselves.
Oh, we can do that
Just so
at
she
the
knows
end, maybe,
who's
when
in the
we ask
room.
it, if we ask a
Okay.
question.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll introduce ourselves there. Okay, go ahead, Amanda.
Perfect. So first of all, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for this space to share a little bit of my research. Yeah, I'm a Peruvian researcher. Doing my PhD in communication department at Cornell University. Most of my research is born from my two backgrounds. My undergrad is in biology, and now I'm doing a PhD in communication and social science. It's like kind of a big change, at least for me. I try to merge of both perspectives in my research. This study that I'm going to talk today started in 2021, like as when I have biological perspective, focus only in recruit information about bats and trying to get as much information as I wanted. But with the years and with a more social perspective and a better understanding of what community science is, I moved from this perspective to a project that looks for a social impact, social outcomes, and it's more oriented to this focus. So this presentation is focused on my study and my results in this year, 2023, when I developed the project in urban and rural areas of Peru. Also, additional to my preliminary results, I will share with you some of the lessons I take from this experience from a decolonized perspective over the practice of methods in community science. Well, to start, I need to tell you a little bit about bats and give you a little bit of context of this research. Bats are reservoirs of some of the deadliest viral zoonoses in the world. These animals are unique. They can have a lot of virus that probably will kill any other animal, but they just survive. They just carry these virus and live like peacefully. But the problem with this is that anthropogenic stressors can be habitat loss, for example, can affect these bats' resistance and increase the possibilities of a spillover, that is the transmission of a virus from a bat to humans. That is why it's so important to keep an eye on bats community and conserve their population to maintain their communities and don't stress their populations, increasing the probability of a spillover. And specifically in Latin America, we have a particular problem with bats. Most rabies cases now are related to bat attacks. They used to be related with dog bites, but now it's related with bats. And these have implications in health, economy, and ecosystems. In terms of health, rabies cases have caused human death, especially in remote areas of the region. There is, in zones of high risk, there is like 80% of the inhabitants are being bitten by bats that feed on blood, leading to a mortality of almost like from 1 to 40 deaths per village. And we don't have an exact number because, as you may imagine, in rural communities, there's not such much information related with that. But as you can see, like rabies is a problem, specifically in remote areas of the country. Related with the economic impact, the rabies transmitted to cattle, for example, have case animal mortality. And to kind of like face this, the government have made some vaccination campaigns that have cost us $300,000 per year. This becomes also more relevant, specifically in rural areas when they don't have the resources needed to face these problems. Peru is a really centralized country. In Lima, there is the capital. 40% of the universities, 60% of the hospitals are in the capital. That is represent less than 5% of the total territorial extension. As you can see, there is like the government is not in every place of the country. The government only sees, and not only, but majority sees like the capital and forgets about the necessities and the needs of the people in the rural communities. And what happened in these rural communities? Well, most of them, or many of them, like survive from cattle raising. So having these bats attacks at, affecting their cattle cause high economic impacts, especially in remote areas. And what these communities have done over the years to kind of like fill the gap of assistance from the government and try to face this challenge, where they have tried to control the population of bats by their own hands. This means that they have go to roost. Bats are highly social animals, so they live in roosts. The communities go to roost and they're setting fire these roosts, waiting for like the bats population to decrease. What happened with this, and that they most of the times don't kill bats that feeds on blood. They kill bats that feeds on flowers, feeds on fruits, feeds on have other type of diets that actually these species of bats that they target at bats that feeds on blood, they accomplish ecosystem roles that are essential. So at the long term, these ways that the community have tried to do to face this problematic of rabies attacks, of rabies cases in their cattle, have caused loss of bats population and have impact the ecosystem roles accomplished by these bats. And talking about bats, and I was talking about the diversity of bats species, that there are not only the bats that feeds on blood. I know that they are probably the most famous ones, but bats in general are really diverse group of animals. We have bats that feeds on insects that are really great at pest control. We have bats that feeds on fruits that are great for seed dispersal. They go eat a fruit, then they go flying, and their feces when they are flying, they let the seeds, and then the seeds grow in the land, and they, for example, are essential for reforestation. And we have also the nectarivorous bats that are great for pollination, like similar as hummingbirds, but at night. So as you can see, bats play crucial roles in the ecosystem, but unfortunately, people know more about bats related with bats that feed on blood. From the 195 bat species that we have in Peru, only 3 feed on blood, and from these 3, only 1 feeds on cattle. The other 2 are in the middle of the jungle. No one have connection with them. They are even difficult to reach for biologists. So as you can see, like bats that feed on cattle are really a minimal number. But what happened is that people don't see the results of pollination. People don't see the results of plague control, but they see the problems of cattle because they're the ones that are more evident. So that's why most of people, especially in remote areas, link it bats with a diet based on blood. To give you kind of a more like graphical example, like if we have 100 of bats in Peru specifically, this will be the distribution of the bat that feeds on insect in yellow, the bat that feeds on fruits in purple, the one that feeds on nectar from the flowers in green, and there are some bats that feed on fish that are like only 2, and 1 that feeds on blood. The majority of them are insectivorous, they feed on insects, and this is like most of the places, even in rural or urban areas, they represent the majority of bats species of bat in these areas. So in this context of on this duality of bats, at first a threat for human health and also having causing economic loss, but at the same time, bats as essential for the ecosystem, is where this project born. So this community science research seeks to improve for human health, but community and ecosystem service. That's why we call a One Health perspective. And we try to accomplish this through a cooperative national sampling of bat distribution in Peru, urban and rural areas. And how we try to do this? Through the participation of the community in this project, we expect to improve participants' perception of bats. I'm going to talk about this a little in some minutes, but we do like systematic conversations before and after participation to try to respond to questions and inform participants on topics related with bats. And so with this conversation, we try to improve participant perception with bats. If we improve this perception of bats, our goal is to reduce the possibility of virus transmissions from bats attacks. How? If we improve participants' perception of bats, people are not going to try to have negative behaviors as setting on fire roots related to bats. And this way, we decrease the probability of direct interaction between human and bats. And if we reduce the direct interaction between human and bats, we will reduce the possibility of virus transmission. And in this way, if we reduce the possibility of negative behaviors from humans to bats, we reduce the possibility of affecting bat population and affecting the ecosystem role provided by these animals. This is like a big picture of how the relation of this project is. We look for people's health, ecosystem services, and bat community. People health, as I mentioned before, if we improve the people's perception related with bats, they will decrease their intention of behaviors related, negative intention behavior related with bats, as setting on fire the roots, and in this way decreasing the direct interaction between people and between bats. If we reduce this negative interaction, we decrease the possibility of affecting the bats community. So we increase the possibility of bats to maintain stable and to conserve their community. And if we conserve by community, we will maintain the ecosystem services provided by these animals. This is going to keep more sense when we are going like from every step of the project. But this is like how we map the actions and the goals we expect from this project. So our methodology, first we start with a call for participants. As I mentioned before, we have our focus is in rural and urban areas, so the call for participants varies a little bit. After this call for participants that is also limited by the number of equipment we have, we do pre-intervention interviews with the participants. We ask them about their perception about bats, their previous encounters related with bats, the knowledge related with bats, and their intention of behaviors. I want to highlight that we talk about intentions of behaviors, not behavior by itself, because that's something that we cannot measure at this time of the project. After the interview with the participants, we develop the acoustic participation, that is where participants have the equipment. We teach them how to install it in their house. The equipment maintains in their house for 3 nights. Then we go collect the equipment, and then we analyze the data. After that, we return with the results of the participants' recordings, and we show to them what the species of bats we have registered around their house. We talk with them about every doubt that they have related with bats, problematic issues that they have. And after that, we go and we will reunite with the team to reflect over the experience and try to improve the next campaign of the project. This is an ongoing project. We plan to maintain this project for a long term, because the communities we are working on, we want to maintain a relationship constantly and map their progression on the relation with bats. This is our we have developed the project in 3 regions. We try to consider 3 things to choose these places. First, we choose a place when we have a local researcher connected with, because as people that come from a different region, we come from the capital, we understand that for having a connection with rural communities, we cannot go simply there. We have to talk with them, and we have to be introduced by someone else. That was the first requirement. And second, that we try to go to places that have report of conflict with bats. And also, as a last, our last intention is also have a representation of ecosystems. So we choose a place that was in the middle of the Amazonas, that was near Iquitos. We developed this project in San Pablo de Cuyana, a community near the Iquitos. We have the rural community that was San Pablo de Cuyana, and the urban community that was Iquitos. We also have developed the project in Cusco. In Cusco, rural areas that was in the community of Lucre and also in urban areas in the city of Cusco. And we developed the project in Lima urban areas, and in 2 communities in the high Andes of Lima, that is San Lorenzo de Huachupampa y Quilcamacha y Vicas. This is the 3 regions of the country that we developed this project. As I mentioned before, we did the project in urban and rural areas of these regions. This is, for example, a photo of a urban area that we met. We consider like these 2 different communities to develop the project, because we acknowledge the different conflicts that have people in urban areas, that actually they have fear related with bats, but there is not a fear related with you actually finding the community of bats that are here. Here there are not. In the city, regularly, you cannot find bats that feed on blood. You are only going to find probably bats that feed on insects and bats that feed on maybe nectar or fruits. But in contrast, in communities in rural areas, for example, you can have the probability, and in all the communities we have mapped, you have the presence of bats that feed on blood. So actually, you have a conflict here in urban areas. It's more like a fear about bats, but not a real risk related with bats. To make the call for participants, because we did it in urban and rural areas, we accomplished a different type of call for participants. In urban areas, we focus on the call for participants based on social media. We use Facebook and Instagram, and we also get information related with people's perception related with bats in the comment of these calls. And for urban area and for rural areas, the challenge was different. So as I told you before, we have a local researcher that introduced us to the community, that come with us, and also that introduced to the community leaders, that are people that are really important to talk before you can talk with the members of the community. So we made this, and they told us like who is the person that we can talk with, and also who are the persons that maybe they are interested on participating with. And in the communities where leaders were more open, they let us do like door-to-door recruitment, to go door to door and ask people, do you want to participate in this project, yes or no? And one thing that we learned in this experience is how important it is to be considered about the local parties, right? Because in one of the campaigns we have in this community, they were celebrating they have a water party, so we have some challenges trying to reach for participants. So in the pre-intervention interview, we asked participants about the previous experiences with bats, knowledge about bats, perception, and behavior intention related with bats. This is a photo, for example, of a pre-intervention interview. Intervention, I refer to the participation in the acoustic methods of the people. So this is the acoustic method action of the participants. As you can see here, this was in the community in Amazonas, and here you can see me, the interviewer, the person that is being interviewed, and 2 other people. So what we're trying to maintain is how the person feels more comfortable. In this case, the community member feel more comfortable to having the local researcher that she know. So we know that there are like concerns about privacy. We respect the participant decision over who they want to be present in the interview. And in this case, she feels better to have like the local researcher that she know already. So that's something that we respect during the application of our methods. Related with the findings that we have in these pre-intervention interviews, we find that in Amazonas, specifically in this type of ecosystem, participants knew about the variety of bats diet and distinguished them by the color of the fur. And this was particularly important. Even for a biologist, it's by far difficult to distinguish a bat by the color of the fur. Even they knew it, like they can do it really well. In the middle of the night, it's difficult to distinguish one bat from the other one. So this was important to consider, like conservation measure, for example, what these people need to know related with what bats feed on blood that affect their cattle, and what bats are actually good for the ecosystem. We also find that in all rural communities we apply this project, people have problems with bats that feed on blood in their cattle. Can be in their cows, and also we have problems of bats feeding on their chickens. In general, in urban, specifically in urban areas, participants were unaware of bat size, diversity, and also their ecosystem role. Then the size, for example, was something that was really shocking for us. People thought that bats were like this size, and actually bats are really small, and they are not that huge. So we use like bat teddies to kind of teach them the size of bats. But in terms of the ecosystem role, even the people, for example, in the Amazonas, they know about the diverse diets of bats. They didn't know about why bats were important. But what's really interesting that we find in Amazonas and Cusco, that despite they didn't know that bats are good for the ecosystem, they say that bats should exist for a reason. So they didn't know why, but they say like bats should exist for a reason. And that was really, really one of the findings that we find really interesting. Then related with the perception of the presence of bats, and that varies based on the location. For example, in rural, in Amazonas and Cusco, we find that people were like, well, in Cusco and Lima, we find that people were like more less afraid of bats because they didn't see it very often. But in Amazonas, they're surrounded by trees. Even in the city, they feel more fear associated with bats because they constantly see bats like flying around their houses. So we connected that with the frequency of interaction with bats. The presence of bats has been associated with witchcraft and magic, specifically in Amazonas and Cusco. And emotions related to bats that we find was fears, amazement particularly in Cusco and Lima, uncertainty, and interest. And there were a lot of intentions of negative behaviors associated with bats, especially in rural areas, especially in Cusco, in all the communities that were rural, because they actually face a problem related with bats. So they have intentions, and not only intention, they have they have certain fire routes related with bats. And related with this last point, in one interaction we have with participants in the Amazonas, we were talking with them about like what actions they have, and they told us like they have set fire on a route that was like near their house, and we asked them like how the bats that were in these routes look like, and she told us like they have like a nose similar to a leaf. And we teach them, like we show them that the bats that have a nose in the form of a leaf was actually frugivorous bats, and bats that feed on blood have the nose in shape of a pig. So they find that really interesting, and they actually change their intention of behavior related to the bat's diet. And this you can see after this interaction, we find really useful to show participants how to recognize physically by their faces the type of diets of bats. And participants were really good learning. We did this pre-intervention and post-intervention. And post-intervention, people really recognize easily what bats feed on blood. And what's particularly important, because in this way we can avoid that they set on fire routes of bats that actually don't have any related with attacking cattle. They actually are eating fruits and eating bananas all the time. So they find this really useful. This comes the acoustic participation and data analysis. So we give them the equipment, we teach them how to use the equipment, how to turn on the equipment, and then based on the participants, the participants interested on where to put the acoustic detector, we settle the detector in their houses. And this is important because, so as a biologist, we try to always choose the different ecosystem to try to have like a diverse sampling of type of habitat. But we find that people were actually not interested about like different type of ecosystem. They were like, I want to know what's in my cattle, near my cattle. So we prioritize that over our biological goals. And at the end, we shape our research based on the community, what the community wanted to know and what the community need information about. After the 3 nights, also something really interesting about this conversation and to have this like close relationship with people about the acoustic detector by itself. One of the interests about these people was like, so this is going to record my conversations. They were interested about privacy concerns related with this. Of course, we explained to them that this only records bad sounds, so ultra sounds that are not audible for us. So they became like, they were more like their concerns goes away when they knew that. But it was interesting to see how they relate with the equipment too. Yeah, so after these 3 nights, as you can see here, for example, this is how we differentiate the urban areas and the rural areas. The ones that you can see, the points at the right are all in urban areas and the part at the left are all in the rural community. So we try to maintain it near, like in the same region, but they still like separate in the type of experiences of the participants and also the type of ecosystem that are near the places we are sampling. The same in Cusco, for example, the ones that are like at the right are the ones that belong to rural areas. When it says Laguna, Bryan, Alexander, there is like rural areas, and the ones that are near the lighter brown are the ones that are near the urban areas. As you can see, the landscape is really different on both. I'm not sure if I can share my sound just to make you, yeah. So I hope you can see here, but this is what we find related with bats. Each of these little line is a bat sound. So this is bat's call. I hope you can hear. So that's not a bat. That's the regular sound that we usually hear. This is a record from the Amazon. And how is the bat sounds? So one reason why people usually don't see bats, I'm sure around their house, around your houses there are bats. One reason people don't see bats is because bats are really fast. The only bats that you can see probably are bats that feed some flowers that need to go down to kind of like get them to the flower and then go up. But it's difficult, and also we don't hear it as birds because, as you can see in the regular sound, you cannot hear a bat. But if you put this sound in 10 times like slower, that's the sound of a bat, and that's here like kind of a bird. So we choose these results to the participants, we explain this to them, and we teach them how we analyze the data. Okay, so we're talking just a little bit about species and about bats. So in general, we find a lot of diversity in Iquitos that is expected. Even in urban areas, we have more participants. In rural areas, where the places where we find more diversity, that makes sense because bats have more resources in rural areas when they are near the forest, when they are near the valley, for example, except for Lima, that as you can see, there was more species in urban areas because there was a lot of people participating in rural areas. So one thing that I want to highlight here is related with how this project can be related also with conservation. In this case, for example, as you can see, there is like a similarity between the species that you can find in places that are highly urbanized, the places that are kind of urbanized but have green areas. They make clusters and they like get grouped because there is more diversity in places that are actually near green areas, and there is like less species in places that are more like urbanized. So this is just preliminary results. This is some of the maps we developed related with bats. We can also see like diversity activity, and based on that, and diversity of species, and based on that, also identify, for example, ecological routes for bats. This is an example of what we did in Lima. And yeah, so this is like the outcomes that we get in terms of biological information. I'm running in this part just because I know that we are going to talk there are things a little bit to talk a little bit more, and the time is going. But just this is the time of biological information we obtain from the project and from the participants that are being part of the project. So what we find after these results, after we share these results with the participants, city participants demonstrate increasing knowledge about bats, diet, diversity, also the size of bats. They have an accurate vision now, and the ecosystem role, and a decrease in negative emotions associated with bat presence in urban areas. We have a participant that started the project in the pre-intervention interviews, like he knew that he wanted to kill bats. He said, like, I wanted to kill bats because they are always around in my house, and I'm afraid that they are going to bite my dog. And after the participation, after he knowing the results about the type of bats that were around their houses, he was from urban areas, so he saw that majority of bats are fed on insects. He was like, no, actually, bats are good. I'm not going to be afraid about my dog because they are not going to feed on my dog, so I'm okay with that. I feel less stressed right now. So this is the kind of reaction we have for the participants that were part of this project. In most of rural communities, we knew that participants knew a little more about the bats, so they reinforced their knowledge about bats, how to recognize them. They easily learn how to recognize these bats. We make, like, as I showed you before, this kind of like picture game that they recognize which bats feeds on blood, which bats feeds on insects, and then learn really fast. And from all the ecosystem roles, the one that they really love, bat control plagues, that makes sense because they also have crops, so they were really interested about the role of bats related with control plagues. The participants indicate that the sounds were the most impressive part of the share material. We showed to them, for example, photos, kind of graphs, everything, but they love the sounds. And this also makes us think, and now we are doing like some plans to work with people that have visual limitations to kind of like talk with them about bats. And I think that this is, for example, material that would be useful in this conversation with them. And participants provide valuable information for the studies, such as bat diet. They told us like, yeah, this bat fits on this plant or this plant or this plant. So that was really valuable information for our research. Then they also share stories associated with bats, and a little bit about like the lessons we learned and how we are trying to improve our research from a recognized perspective. First, self-reflexivity. So from the start, we acknowledge that we come from the capital, we come from a place that we don't face the problems that they have about bats. We don't have like economic laws based on like bats feeding on their cattle. So even we love bats, we understand that it's not our, so we need to empathize with them and with their problems, to kind of like find a way to equilibrate what they need and also our interests that we want, the goals that we need to accomplish. In this case, for example, we could not start a conversation with the community saying, oh, the bats are important because the bats complete these ecosystem roles. We need to start this conversation talking with them. We know that you have a problem with bats. Let me teach you first. Also, one thing that I forget to mention is that we, with all the communities that have problems with bats, we show them that they can articulate this problem with authorities, and we help them with all the records we have from bats that feed on blood. Based on this study, we articulate the conversation with the authorities to make to send experts to control the population of bats that feeds on blood. So our research don't finish there. Our research finish when the community have an action from the health authority. We are still arranging the intervention, but we consider their problem and we understand that they need an action. So we always start first telling them that we are going to articulate the conversation with the community, the authorities, and that's what we are doing right now. And then after like empathizing with their problem, we start talking about the other type of bats. And we saw that that's actually helping us. This is the community leader there that started seeing us as a way to kill all the bats, to then explaining all the communities that bats are really important for the ecosystem. And there is only one that have have been causing this problem. So this is actually that really helped us to develop this study. Then questioning methods, like as a new social scientist, I was teach about the focus group. You are a researcher, to moderate your conversation with the community, but that's not what happened there. Communities there were really hierarchy. So we, as researchers, we cannot go there and start saying like, yeah, I'm going to moderate. No, it's the leader of the community who moderates the conversation, and you are the researcher who asks for permission to talk. And also there is no limitation of the focus group. We need to, like, we ask that for the leader, and the leader says, no, if you want to talk with the community, with like, you want to accomplish something in the community, you have to talk with all the community, the 50 people that are in the community, not only a focus group of 8 persons. So that was something that we really need to like acknowledge, like the possibility of the application of these methods to this type of communities, and be really respectful of their needs, and also of their approach of their research. And finally, the relationship. I know that this sounds redundant, but so we are not focused on giving back. We don't want so. And this is something that it's really important, at least for me. Like, as researchers, we cannot decide what giving back means to the community. We need to hear what the community wants to be giving back. So in this case, we hear that the community, what they expected from us, from giving back to them for their participation in the research, was helping them to have a response from the authority. So that's what we made. We set a relationship with the community that go in long term, more than the finish of the project. We keep working with them even if the project has finished with this community. So in this case, we don't decide what giving back means. They decide, and they tell us what they expect from us. Also, we maintain the relationship. We finished the project, but we still did, for example, this project to the kids, because we find that during our conversation, the leader told us that they were really concerned about like what kids did in their free time. This community that we were working on, they have a high rate of young pregnancy. They were kids of 12, 14 years pregnant, and they wanted to do activities for these kids, kind of like to I'm not sure how to say this in English, but to like accomplish their children experience. So we did what they wanted, and we did a playful day with them related with bats. So that was a way that we hear what they need, and we do this in terms to like kind of like build this relationship. So this was in general like the some of the insights of the research and some of the preliminary results. This is still in work in progress. We are going to go in December for other communities, and also we are still coding the interviews. So yeah, and just to finish, maybe some of you ask like why you didn't do a questionnaire or something more quantitative, because it's the first project we developed here, at least in Peru. We think it's important to notice the difference that we can find in Latin American countries than in Western, like for example, methods or measurements that have been established in the global north. So we prefer to do it like first do it like qualitatively, and then in long term try to do it like maybe if we expand the project, maybe do it more quantitative. And yeah, so that's all I have to share. Thank you so much for this time, and we are open to questions.
Thank you, Amanda. That was so cool. I feel like there are a lot of questions that people are just trying to generate. And I did want to actually start us off. Our faculty director, Heidi, was here earlier and she had to leave early, but she noticed that your study had a lot of really great in-person interactions between the local participants and the researchers. And how many people were doing those visits with the participants. That seems like it's a really like intense sort of labor requirement, and how much time, like just give us a little bit of a sense did that take?
So the team that developed this project?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So so we are actually two, one biology, like one full-time biologist, well, not full-time, like one biologist and me that are the leaders of this project, that we are the ones that travel, but we have two students, two biology students that help us with processing data. But we are a small group. We also kind of partner with local researchers that you see there in the photos, but they vary based on the project that based on the community we are working on. So in total, we are like kind of five. And it's really time consuming, and that's something that I think is really important to acknowledge, that most of the budgets that now, for example, we are developing this project, it doesn't consider like payment for the scientists. They only consider payment for the materials. That becomes a little difficult, not for me, but for example, for the biologist that is traveling with me, because it keeps saying no to other jobs just to go here and being part of the project. And also most of the project, and I think this is something that many of you that do community science project maybe can empathize with, but community science projects require a long relationship, well, not long, but kind of like building the relationship with that community. And most of the project was like results in like 1 year and really fast. So that's what's also really challenging for us. But we are trying to kind of like equilibrate the resources that we have and also the time that we have. Mm-hmm.
Should we let the Zoom questions go first?
Yeah, let's see.
I have a question. No, there was some.
Rosalie asked, I'm curious if the research on whether COVID-19 is connected to bats came up in the study. Have the community members heard about this? Rosalie says, my understanding is that it isn't fully understood, but I can imagine folks who already fear bats for other diseases reasons could find this concerning.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We find that the COVID-19 was more present in urban areas than in rural areas. In rural areas, no one mentioned COVID-19, but in urban areas, specifically in Lima, that is the capital, they were like most participants that mentioned that. And but yeah, in Peru in general, there were like three big occasions that were actually news in the country, that people from the communities go to roots roots to set it on fire. And the reason was because they believe that COVID-19 was related with bats. And we are actually going to this community on this winter. But besides that, in any of the community and the community in rural areas, they never mentioned COVID-19, but in the rural areas, yes.
That's interesting. Looks like Ryan is raising his hand.
Yeah, hi Amanda. Thank you for that presentation. I really appreciated it. And I have a question about that specific thing you shared regarding the placement of the instruments to pick up the bat sounds and trade-off between doing it in the houses or right near the cattle is what I think I understood, versus something that was more focused on ecosystem questions that you might have had or that your research team might have had. So it sounds like there was a tension there, and kudos to you and your collaborators for prioritizing the community interests. I'm wondering what specific trade-offs or what kind of sacrifices you might have thought you were making in going that direction, from like a, I don't know, publications standpoint or data utility standpoint. And then now reflecting on it, were those indeed sacrifices you ended up making, or were there other upsides you didn't anticipate? Like how did that play out?
Yeah, so actually we find that at least for biology papers, they are going to be really like not so happy with this decision. I think like citizen science journals could be like more understandable about this. But we decide, so actually this frame completely like the focus of our research. For example, in this case, we are going to focus more on the presence of a specific species, that was the Smodus rotundus, that is a species that feeds on blood. So actually, based on the location of these acoustic detectors, we probably are going to find more places where only this species exists. So maybe we can frame our research most of like bat diversity in this area of the presence of these species in this area. So that's how we are trying to like kind of like compensate the information. But at the same time, one thing that was really good about doing this change is that in comparison with other communities that didn't, for example, communities in the Amazonas, where they didn't push too much about this location of the acoustic detectors. In the communities that they asked for putting in near the cattle, we have recording of these species, like more recordings of these species that feeds on blood. So when we send these recordings to the authority that is in charge of the management of bats, they respond faster because they knew there is a problem. You have a lot of recording of these species in this area. So that was good for like finding a response from the authority in this case. And yeah, and as I mentioned, like from a biological perspective, we are just going to try to frame the research focus on that species in that area, and not like from a general bad community, because that will be really criticized from the biology perspective. We are trying now, actually. I think this is the best decision. I'm not sure if you have any recommendation for this, but we were thinking about how we are going to publish this study, and we decided to publish the biological outcomes in one paper that is focused on a journal from biology, of course mentioning citizen science and participation of people and that, but just in a superficial way. But publishing these other the interviews, for example, and more like more deep analysis about the relationship with the community and the outcomes of citizen science in more like a social science oriented journal. So that's the way we are seeing our research being published. Yeah.
I had a question, just sort of a clarification about rabid bats. I know that that can lead to human deaths if you're bit by a rabid bat, and I was wondering if it only impacts the species of bats that eat blood, or if the other species of bats can also become rabid. And I know it disrupts their normal behaviors, so I was wondering if you could just clarify about that. So I was wondering if that was something that the community were also afraid of.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking for the clarification. I think that's important. Yeah, so the species that are related with bats are the ones that feed on blood, and specifically the one that like have like more contact with human. Even for example, in the bats that feed on blood, that is one is bats on cattle that is one in the Peruvian context. Even them, not all the bats have rabies. Just some of them, some individuals or some populations. But the importance of avoiding contact not only with bats that feed on blood, but with any other bats is what I was telling about, like bats as virus reservoirs, because we don't know in what context or in one interaction these deadly virus that have bats can be spilled over to humans. So there is a high probability, because we are both mammals and that have seen before. So the reason why we are trying to avoid any contact, any direct contact, besides like the regular treats from contacting wildlife, is because these animals like have a lot of virus that can be deadly for humans. So yeah, the rabies specifically as just for bats that feed on blood, and not all bats that feed on blood have rabies, but there is a probability there. But the other species are also virus reservoirs, so that's why we try to avoid any contact with bats. Mm-hmm.
I had a question about the educational materials to support this. It sounded like the acoustic recordings were the most impactful for people to see, but what did you end up having to create a bunch of supporting materials for this, and what kinds of things were really helpful I know that that visual with the bat diets of 100 bats was really helpful for me to look at. It was cool.
Yeah, so we did wait, first we show them the sounds. That's one part. We also, with these stickers that you can see here or these photos, we made for them key change. That is something that they can have in with their keys, because we find them that they can easily identify a bat with that based on like the characteristics of their noses. Their we give them for specifically for rural communities to them to make have something near their key that they can see like easily. We also give to them these guides that I'm not sure if you can see here. Okay. Oh. Okay, this one. These guys that I think you can see here in the behind the graph, that we did one for each community based on the community results that have all the faces of the bat. They have show what the type of diet that these bat have, and also the name of the bat, and yeah, like general information related with that. So that's the material that we gave to them, besides the sounds, but they love the sounds. And we also made, I'm sorry I didn't have a photo here, but I think maybe here, I don't know if you can see, no, I don't think it's there, but we made teddies of bats, like real like bats teddies, considering their size and considering their face, so they can have like, because we cannot travel with bats from the lab, right, in the airplane. So we made these studies to like making them able to see it. That's, as I mentioned, like, and I'm really excited about this because we are like now like working in a workshop or an activity with people that have visual limitations, and we are using all this material with them, and we find that it's a public that unfortunately has not been included enough to community science and science communication in general. So we are using also these materials for them.
I also have a question too. I know, but I was wondering, we talked a little bit about the like tensions between like publishing and like what the community wants. I was also wondering what the tensions were for you as the researcher and for the research team with like the institutions that you're a part of. So like, how was it to be like, we're actually prioritizing the community, and how did the institutions take that when that was your decision?
So you mean like me as a researcher from a international university? That's
yeah, like you're like, yeah, like how did like your university think about prioritizing the community instead of the science?
That's a great question. So first to start, that's something I didn't talk about it, but so me as a woman, as a researcher, was really hard. For example, doing interviews in this community in Lima, men don't look at me. Like I did interviews with I have a biological student that he just take notes. I was the one that I was asking the questions, but they never look at me. They look at my my student that was the assistant on the field. So that was really challenging for me to like kind of like continue the conversation, but was something that I have to understand, and was not my role to impose like, hey, look at me, or hey, like I'm a woman, but I'm in your same level. So that was not something that was my role. So that was something I have to face with that. And also that, for example, for me, people didn't like, all my peers, they were called scientists or they were called researchers, but for me, I was a lady in their like, when they refer to me during the normal conversation, except when I was presented to the community in the assembly. When I was presented in the community in the assembly, I was called as a researcher, but only in that situation. And related with my institution affiliation, I didn't mention with them. I just mentioned it with the community leader and with the authorities in Peru, because I find it that was really, that first with the authorities and health in Peru, it was easier for them to get a response. And for the community leaders, because I was in a position of no power at all, because I was a woman, it at least gave me a little of support for kind of like have a horizontal conversation. And that helps, that like in our interaction, that helps. But with the community members, I didn't say I have any, like I was saying like, yeah, I'm working for a university, but I didn't specify what university I was working on. So that was something I have been like really carefully like managed with them.
Maybe you can do one more if there's one last question, recognizing we're just at the hour here.
Yeah, I have a question if we have time for it.
Yeah, last one.
I know you mentioned that there was a little bit more of people in rural communities when compared to urban communities. They were a little bit more negative towards bats because they had more experience with seeing them. So I was curious if it was harder to participate with rural communities when compared to urban communities, and if you had kind of more objection to them participating and being involved, what the comparison was there.
Yeah, in rural communities, yeah, it was difficult to get participants, but at the same, so I think the difficult part was to balance expectations because they became interested when you talk about bats and they find you that you are going to solve their problem by yourself. So if they did, they were really interested if you like if they see you that you are going to go and kill the bat because you are a biologist and you can control the situation. But as soon as you explain that this is actually not what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to articulate, I'm going to do this step, but I'm not going to like as I mentioned, like settle the expectations. It was for some of them was difficult to maintain engaged. I still understand that as the recruitment process, there is also going to be a bias on who participates because most of the time it's participates that people that are really interested in the topic. But in this case, they were different motivations from the people to participate. I tried to balance the expectations in the sense that I tried to tell them that I was not going to do that. I was going to articulate it. But yeah, but still the number of people in the community that participate were less, but the number of people in the rural communities that hear about the results and hear about bats were more because they have like these assemblies that a lot of people get thrown in it. So at the end, I think like even not we didn't have a lot of participants in these areas, we can have a bigger impact because we talk with all the community at the end. So that was like some trade-off that I find it.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for this amazing presentation. I feel like I still have more questions I want to talk to you about, but thank you for providing your contact information so we can follow up with additional questions. And if you want to stay informed of future events like today, I'll put the link in the chat so you can find us. And next year, already in 2024, we'll be hosting Rosalie, who was just on this call at some point. And she'll discuss strategies for integrating the UC Berkeley Foodscape Mapping Project's goals around critical pedagogy, non-hierarchical student-driven research processes, and organizational change. So that'll be really exciting. Keep an eye out for that. And thanks again for joining us today. We'll have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.